Okay, so it's
Oh.
Lenny and Blasi. Hi. We're uh, going to talk to you today. Talk to each other too a little bit about what it's like to learn Greek, ancient Greek. Um, and Blasi's much closer to the process of doing it than I am. I learned Greek when I was, uh, 11 years old. Started
Wow.
learning Greek. That's a long time ago. I got the white hairs to show for it. Lisi much more recently, but I hope my voice. Yeah, I've got to make sure that I'm talking loud enough for you to hear.
Hmm.
Um, the it's a difficult process relative to learning languages, modern languages, or it's a different process. Let's not call it difficult. I think the main thing is that it's a different kind of experience. You're in for an adventure in learning ancient Greek, right?
Definitely. Yep.
I mean, what were your expectations when you started? And what were some of the things that happened when you began learning ancient
Mm.
Greek?
I had no idea what to expect.
Right.
I had never really learned a language formally. I had taken like a few classes in Spanish here or there, but
Uh-huh.
nothing that I really took too seriously.
Right. Right.
So I had zero idea. And I learned a lot more than I bargained for with Greek. I mean,
Right.
I learned just about grammar in general and how language works. And in a way, it's kind of interesting to not be able to speak it because you don't get tripped up in pronunciation and
Right.
worrying about how you sound or
Right.
like, and you have a little bit of time to really think about it. And, it's a little bit less scary when it's just on paper sometimes. And
Yeah. I mean, there are these amazing disadvantages to learning a language that you can't speak because that's
mm-hmm.
how we actually learned our own languages, by speaking them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a proven fact about the human brain that it can do that. Okay, and
Mm-hmm.
anybody can do it. It's somehow or other something that we're able to do, manipulate these complicated systems of symbols. But when you don't activate that stuff, it becomes a much more conscious process. It's an intellectual process, right?
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Instead of an unconscious process. I mean, it's important to realize that when we speak, we don't think about the grammar of the sentences. We don't
Right.
think about how to make the words, which ones to choose. It all happens in our unconscious mind in a very, very seamless way.
Mm-hmm.
And so the whole unconscious process is something that when you learn Greek, you make in consciousness. So it's like, wow, that
Yeah.
really, it really looks impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And the important thing is not to get intimidated about it because little Greek children could do it. So can you. Okay? But it's going to take longer this way
Mm-hmm.
because we do it in stages, right?
Yeah, I think eventually too it helps you like understand your own language and any other language you may have learned up to
Yeah,
this point.
that's right. I mean, this class
Makes
doesn't
you a lot more
assume,
aware.
when I was a kid, my parents called the school I went to grammar school because that's what you learn.
Right.
um, and nowadays people learn less and less grammar, and so we don't assume that you know anything, and we try to teach you everything that you know, which means learning things about the rules of your own language.
Right.
And so that's always good to you become aware of things that you may not have known. And for those of you who know grammar, so much the better. But
Yeah.
everybody's in the same boat in this class. We try to get as close as we can to the experience it is for you,
Mm-hmm.
and we treat you all the same. So some of you may have had Latin, for example, right? And that helps a lot because it's another language that you don't learn by speaking it. I mean, there are people who actually teach people to speak Latin. There's a guy who's been doing it in Rome for years and years. And you can do that, okay? And it isn't impossible, but it's just an artificial thing for lots of reasons. I mean, we don't have any spoken Greek, right?
Mm-hmm.
All we have is written Greek, and we have poetry and oratory and Platonic dialogues, but it's very clear that they're very fancy kinds of language, and it's not what people said in everyday circumstances.
Right.
So there's that. The other thing that's important to think about, because we're going to take you through this experience, you're going to learn things about how the language works as a structure, how the language is a system, and there are two parts to it. There's the understanding of the Greek language as a system, and then there's the fact that there's all this stuff to remember, right?
Yeah.
And when you learn a language by speaking, the memory, you don't have to memorize lists of vocabulary words when you're a year old. You just use them and you learn them.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're learning a language this way, you got to put some effort into remembering things. Most of us do. There are some people who are very fast at learning words, and some people who are slower or who need help. And it's not because you're defective. There are all kinds of different learning styles in the world. So one of the things that we try to do in this way of teaching Greek is to be able to adapt to different ways of learning, and to help you. And we hope you all feel comfortable in asking questions, but also in realizing that another way of learning, that happens a lot in language, is that you learn by making mistakes. When you were learning your own language, your parents have spent a lot of time correcting you.
Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons that I don't speak French as well as I do is because my wife gave up correcting me. It's so annoying to her, okay? But anyhow, I mean, that's part of what parents do in a natural way, okay? So we have to learn not to be afraid to make mistakes. That's part of the learning process. And so we're going to correct you. The important thing is to try and learn from the mistakes, right? And to see if you can not reproduce them. What are some other tips that we can give people who are starting Greek? It's because it's a slow process. It's going to seem like it's a more difficult language than it is.
Right.
You're going to learn it piece by piece. And here's the other. You should answer that question. What are some of the other things? I mean, the biggest difference between English and Greek is something significant, right? It's the fact that in an English sentence, the way we understand English, the rules of grammar that we're not aware of using in English are about the sequence of words in a sentence, right?
Right.
And that's what determines their function. If you say, this book is yellow, then it's a comprehensible sentence. If you say, yellow, this is book, it doesn't mean anything, right? Mm-hmm. In Greek, the word order is not a key to the understanding of a sentence. It's an amazing idea, okay, and a different way of making sentences. There are things that tell you what a word order in English does tell you. Mm-hmm. There are little suffixes, right? Little things that are added onto the ends of words. So there's the word for father, for example, is pater, and that's when it's the subject of a sentence. So it would be like when father begins the sentence, that's the form that it would have in an English sentence, okay? That's where it would be in an English sentence. But because it has a tag on it that says this form is a subject, you can put it at the end of a sentence, and a Greek person will understand that it's a subject.
Right.
If it's the direct object, like in father knows his children, okay, the father is the subject of that sentence, the children is what's called the direct object. In Greek, father and children one would have a tag saying it's the subject, and another have a tag saying it's the direct object. Mm-hmm. So you could make the sentence children knows father, and Greeks wouldn't get confused as to who knew what. Right. Because they're clear. But in English, it doesn't make any sense if you say children knows father and stuff like that. You have to make explicit the word order to have the right word order to make the sentence comprehensible. Right. So this is it's like going to Japan, okay, or some other country whose culture is as foreign as can be to you. I mean, if you're Japanese, it's like coming to the United States, where people behave in different ways, right? And it's challenging, but it's also mind-bending, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely teaches you to think in new ways, I think.
Yeah. And I think that's a huge part of the excitement for me in teaching Greek is that it's learning about a culture that's different from ours. It's not so much that it's older. That's not what really sticks out. It's how interesting it is the way that these people think and express themselves. So if you think about, for example, just what we're talking about here, if word order isn't what determines the basic meaning of a sentence, then why do you put certain words in certain places in a sentence, in a Greek sentence?
Emphasis in
Emphasis, clarity.
Mm-hmm.
In poetry, it's a matter of aesthetics, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's a resource that English is much more constrained that way,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there are some amazing things that happen in that, and because of the way that this language is structured. All right. Well, are there other things that we should tell these people? So, yeah, we were going to talk a little bit about there's the systematic part of language, and there's the memorizing part of language, the memory part,
Mm-hmm.
and learning vocabulary, learning rules, starting out by learning even things like the alphabet. These are things. When you learned the alphabet, you learned it probably by singing a song, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can make up a song for the Greek alphabet if you want. Or you can, at my school, which was in Boston, we had the school cheer was Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Hamma, Roxbury, Hamma. They had a real Boston accent. But anyway, you can remember Alpha, Beta, Gamma. Those kinds of things are helpful in learning language. Things that you say are much easier than things that you read. And memorizing things that are written is a lot harder than memorizing things that you hear.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like, can you think of examples? Like, there are things that you don't want to memorize.
Yeah, like songs or jingles or
advertising things.
Commercials,
right? You never see them written, but they stick with you.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So, and it can be hard to get them out of your head. So the concept of singing is something very helpful when it comes to trying to understand the way language memory works.
Mm-hmm.
So in any case, what we're saying is that here these are little examples of how learning Greek teaches you to be conscious of processes and of constructs and of cultural and social things, as we'll see that we take for granted, but that can be different in a different context. And so that's part of the adventure is an adventure in language and an adventure in how you learn. Okay, right. Because you got to be alert to the fact that you may not be learning the same way the person next to you is, and that's okay. That's where we have a big tent here, and we want to help you and deal with your individuality as a learner. Okay. All right.